I'm Tamisha Williams, and I'm honored to be able to celebrate CATDC's 20-year anniversary. So first, let me share with you a little bit about my own journey in education and what brought me to where I am today. I have a background in education and have always wanted to work in the education field. I knew pretty early on that I didn't want to be a full-time teacher in the classroom. I was surrounded by teachers in my family and had just incredible respect for the work that they do, but I always saw myself supporting students outside of the classroom setting. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't even know the positions that I've held for the past 9 years existed at that time, but I just knew that that's where I belonged. I received my degrees in education and art, and also a master's in family and marriage counseling, really thinking to myself, I wanted to gain some skills that could help me do this job that I didn't know existed. And since I didn't know these jobs existed, I went on to become a college admission counselor at my alma mater after receiving my teaching certificate and counseling degree. And I would say that a pivotal moment for me was showing up at one of my first college fairs at a K through 12 boarding school in the New England area, getting out of my car and just looking around the parking lot at this campus and just pausing and saying to myself, like, wow, this is what the education gap is. There are students that from the age of 5 have access to this, resources, education that I didn't even know existed until I stepped on a college campus. When I was 18. So that moment for me was pivotal in just helping me understand just the deep inequities that existed in terms of resources, financial means, and access to education for students. So again, I knew that I had a passion for education and wanted to solve some of the issues that I was seeing around, but still didn't know how to go about that. It wasn't until I moved to New Mexico around 2013 when I had an opportunity to join my first independent school as a director of diversity initiatives / assistant director of college counseling. But in that position, one, for me, it was like, wow, this role exists. And I understood that I was able to make an impact for students and for educators beyond the classroom, which I had a passion for. I will admit, though, it was a bit of a culture shock. And for me, also constantly, I felt this tension between being in a space that was so well resourced. And I noticed, right, just the impact that had on students, their small class sizes, the creative education that they were a part of. And also knowing that when I walked right outside into the surrounding communities, those other students weren't afforded that opportunity, not because they were any less than, didn't have the same level of potential, but just because, right, of the inequities that exist within the realm of our educational system. So after serving in independent schools for the past 9 years as an equity practitioner, I've chosen to move now into my own consulting work, really working with educators, but even beyond the field of education, to help individuals understand more about equity literacy and racial literacy and how to be able to see what's happening, right? The inequities around us, understand what's happening, and then also figure out ways to address the inequities happening around us. So that's a little bit of my journey. And I'm really pleased, right, to have had CATDC be such an important part of that. You'll often hear me say the phrase, let's do this work in community, and I will sometimes capitalize the C in community. And that's because for me, it really is critical for us to be learning in community across roles, across schools, across states and nations. Anytime that we are doing our work in a silo, we're missing out on valuable perspective. That has just been critical for me as an equity practitioner. Just even getting out of my community here in Virginia and moving to the Southwest and to the West Coast and seeing different regions and some of the issues around race and equity and gender that showed up differently and uniquely in each of those different regions. Religion, I mean, just you name it, right? That the topics themselves definitely cross the boundaries of where we are. But the unique ways in which they show up and the different ways in which folks are addressing some of the inequities surrounding those topics it's critical for me not to operate in a silo. I always found that when I was working across roles and schools and teams, that my work became elevated, that I became a stronger practitioner because I was learning and growing with others. And I did that, I think, at a faster pace than if I were in a silo, working by myself. So for me, it's really critical that we continue to find ways to learn and to grow and to work in community with one another. The other phrase that I'm sure people at my former school have heard me say, and I have it tacked up even on my home office wall now, is relationship before task. Shouts out to Elsa for that phrase. And that's really also guided me in a lot of the work I do and how I do my work, understanding that as I build relationships and when I really intentionally center building relationships, the task becomes more clear. The work towards the task also becomes less tedious. And there's just a level of joy that also comes with the work and meaningfulness to the work as well. So do this work in community, relationship before task. It really helps this work to also be sustainable, which is something that we don't talk about enough. The CATDC has had a really important role in my journey. I first learned about the CATDC my first month into my role as the Dean of Adult Equity and Inclusion at Lick Wilmerding High School. Lots of words there. It was suggested to me by my head of school to check them out as a way for professional development and also to get connected to other educators in the area because I was new to the region and new to the school, and it was a new position. I signed up for their newsletter, and the first newsletter that I read, there was an article written by Lori Cohen, and we have since connected and now are great friends and collaborate on work together. But that article was talking about some of the ways that she was leading professional development for adults in her school community. And immediately I was like, must get connected. This is going to be a part of my job. And so right there, the CATDC was a connection point for me. What I also, I think, later learned and figured out, the CATDC it continues to give educators and educational leaders and administrators a way to amplify their work, the great work that they're already doing, to deepen their skills where they want to continue to grow, and to, again, to just build really strong connections against skills and across schools and roles. Had I not read that first article and connected with Lori, I would not have been connected to a powerful cohort of women who we really each month connected with each other and ensured that we were being sustainable in our roles and that we were pushing and challenging ourselves, that we were also leading, right, in equitable ways in our school community. That group of women, we actually went on to lead a workshop for the CATDC, and just, again, grateful for them saying yes, right? Like, what ideas do you have? Share those with our community. So I grew in my facilitation skills and my collaboration skills through the work that I was able to do with the CATDC. I then went on to help with the Women in Leadership Conference after attending my first year, and just, again, really appreciative for just the space that was curated there, to have an opportunity to go behind the scenes and to plan for the next year's conference, to give input about what worked well and what didn't, and to have an opportunity to also be in front of the women of that conference. It, again, just reminded me, right, of the power of the CATDC to amplify voices, especially voices of folks who may not get amplified. The work that I'm currently doing allows me to work with educators across this nation. And I'm really honored that they spend their time with me, that they trust me with their thoughts, with their concerns, with their worries. And so when I think about advice that I would give to educators right now, honestly, I don't feel like it's my place to give advice, just wishes and hopes. I hope for you time to pause like just moments of pause where you really have an opportunity to check in with yourself and to find ways to get those needs met that haven't been met, I don't know, over the past 2, 3 years. I also wish for educators deep moments of rest and restoration, naps, days off that don't come with any agenda, moments outside that are just peaceful, that you get to just walk and roam and just be with yourself. So much is falling on your backs right now. You have to be so present for the young people of this world. And that's a lot. And so that's why yeah, for me, it's really just where can you find those moments of laughter and joy? And when you find them, to lean into them fully, hold on to them tightly, recreate them over and over. And I also hope for you just deep connection with those that bring you energy, joy, that stretch you, that hold you accountable in the most loving ways, that help you to develop beyond where you are, that help you to see clearly what's happening around you and inside you. That's my hope and wish for educators right now, at a time that I just feel like continues to consistently be unprecedented for the work that you're doing.